What is up, cyber and crypto homies? Today is Thursday, December the 12th of 2024. This is episode number 122 of the Cybersecurity and Cryptocurrency Podcast. I'm your host, Eric English. All the views and opinions on this podcast are solely my opinions and do not reflect the opinions of my employer. If you want to follow me on X, I'm at Cyber Crypto Guide. All right, so I think the title of this podcast should be "Oh, the Irony," with all the things going on with our telecom providers being hacked, and then shortly thereafter, the FBI and other government agencies telling us to use encrypted communications. So now the government doesn't want us to use the telecom system that they can tap into. That's very interesting. So we'll talk about all those different things, the telco hacks and what's going on there, some of the status of that. Also want to talk about return to office mandates. There's just a lot of weirdness going on there, so we'll talk about that too. And then in the crypto world, my goodness gracious, it has exploded, so lots of things to get to on that side as well. So I think we'll start with our lovely telecom providers that have been hacked. Now they're saying, based on the news articles, 8 different telecom providers have been hacked. That is a staggering number, and they say that's just in the United States. Now, what makes you wonder how many in total? They're also saying that they don't even yet know the full scope and the breadth and depth of all of this. So this is an ever-growing thing and very concerning, too, because it looks like based on some of the articles I saw, they're exploiting various Cisco vulnerabilities and even 0 days and things like that to then get into these telecom systems. And T-Mobile even put out an article or a blog or whatever saying that they were literally watching hackers run commands on some of their routers. So my goodness, like that's really scary stuff, and makes you wonder, how all this happened. Why is it happening? Apparently it's the Chinese government, or state sponsored by the Chinese government. That's just crazy. So they say this dates all the way back to April of this year. So April of 2024 is when they think all of this started. So, whoa, man, this is pretty crazy and just so substantial. And this is just the hacks that we know about. What else do we not know about? That's what's really concerning, because there could be way more out there, right? So these are the ones that we're able to at least track and that we're aware of. So, yeah, and then shortly thereafter, the FBI, CISA, all these other government organizations, the 3 and 4 letter orgs came out and said, hey, you as Americans should be using encrypted chat and encrypted calling applications. Well, wait a second. This is very ironic, because I feel like it's been, maybe a year ago where the U.S. government and various other foreign governments were trying to prevent these encrypted applications. You can look at countries like Australia. They were very much against these end-to-end encrypted applications, or zero-knowledge encryption, where these people like Signal and Wire and a bunch of the others don't have access to your data, right? All they see is encrypted data. That's it. That's zero knowledge. They have no access into it, even if they wanted to. There are no backdoors. Well, the Australian government didn't like that. They actually forced a company called Session out of the country, essentially, because Session is a blockchain-based end-to-end encrypted messaging app that I've used before. It's actually pretty slick. It's a little, I would say, cumbersome for, non-techie people. However, it's extremely secure, so there's a lot of benefit there too. But Session moved their headquarters out of Australia because of this type of thing. So the government a year ago didn't want us to have end-to-end encrypted applications because they didn't have a backdoor into them. Well, now it's the flip side. Now they want us to use it because all these telecom providers got hacked. Now, with that said, these telcos that were hacked, they were after very specific targets. They weren't after the average American. They were after political figures and other government figures and whatnot. So it wasn't targeted at your general American population. However, who knows how much data they've stolen? And I know a lot of people say, oh, I have nothing to hide. I don't care if they listen to my phone calls. Well, you might what if you, I don't know, had a phone call with your significant other and you gave them a password over the phone and that call was intercepted as part of all this hacking that's been going on since April? Well, now they've got your password, right? So it's you think you've got nothing to hide until you do, right? That's the whole problem. Everybody's like, oh, I got nothing to hide. I got nothing to worry about. I don't care if they listen to it. But then, when you get hacked or something happens to you, now all of a sudden you're going to care, right? So just take the preventative measures now and use Signal or Wire or, I don't want to say WhatsApp. I'm not a fan of that, but it's allegedly end-to-end encrypted and allegedly uses the same Signal protocol as Signal. So I guess that's good. It's just owned by Meta, so I'm a little hesitant there, but you can use Session. There's a lot of these encrypted communications applications. You got Proton Mail for encrypted email and encrypted file storage, things like that. So there's lots of ways to protect yourself, but either way, just heed their advice, start using Signal. Signal is so easy, like it's beyond easy. It acts just like your text message app. Wire does too, for that matter. Session's a little trickier, as I mentioned, but still extremely secure and very, 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 very secure. So any of those are good to use, right? And you can make phone calls with Wire, you can make phone calls with Signal. I think you can with Session too. I don't know off the cuff, but either way, just make sure you're using one of those. It doesn't matter which one. Tell all your friends, make sure that they all switch over, because this is very important. And you may not think you have anything to hide, but think about all the things you send over text message. Just think about those. What if there's a sensitive conversation? What if you're calling into, I don't know, some medical office, or you're trying to get a credit application, you're making a phone call, and you're giving them your social security number, you're giving them your name, date of birth, address all over the phone, and that phone call gets intercepted. Well, guess what? That's identity theft right there in the making. So I know that people are going to say, oh, I don't have anything to hide, and you can listen to all my phone calls if you want. There's nothing there. But what if there is? And what if you don't remember saying those things? What if you don't remember putting that into a text message, right? Think about all the sensitive pictures you may be sending around too, right? That could get a little creepy, right? If someone's stealing all those pictures. So either way, this looks very targeted towards election-related things and government-related things. However, we don't know the full scope of this. And I think that the details are a little bit scarce because we don't know everything about what's going on. And they say they don't even know if the attacks have stopped. They don't know if the attackers have been evicted from these telco networks. So yeah, this is a very huge problem and a very scary problem to think about. And it should make you really think and second guess your personal security. All right, enough about that. Just protect yourself, please. And freeze your credit too. Some other news here. Our good friends at Ivanti, they are getting just about as bad as Microsoft with all these 0 days and 10.0 CVSS rated vulnerabilities. It is ongoing with Ivanti. They just released another maximum severity authentication bypass vulnerability for one of their products. Yeah, I think this is just, it's scary to watch these, and it's scary to hear about the level that these vulnerabilities are at with, a 9.8, 10.0 CVSS score. This is extremely concerning. What really just boggles my mind is how these continue to happen, and you would think that there'd be some sort of secure coding practice that these companies would abide by. Maybe the base code is just so bad that they can't fix all these. I don't know what the problem is. I'm not much of a coder. However, if you're using Ivanti products, you may want to really reconsider that, because this is just like using Microsoft products, specifically Microsoft Windows. Windows is highly vulnerable, and oh, by the way, Patch Tuesday was this last Tuesday, and there were tons of 0 days that were released there too. So I'm really I'm not even sure what the word is. I'm just baffled, I guess, that the most popular operating system used in the entire world is also the most vulnerable operating system in the entire world, and it just continues to seemingly get worse every month. I mean, there's 100 and something vulnerabilities published, it seems like, every month from Microsoft. Like, when does this stop? When do we stop the madness here? This is really it's just scary. And I also really question and wonder, for organizations that are fighting this uphill battle, I'm really questioning if these orgs should even be using an operating system like this, right? To me, this doesn't seem like something that you would want. You wouldn't want to be running these ridiculously vulnerable operating systems in your organization. And I do think that eventually we will switch to, more orgs will start switching away from Windows if they can't get their act together. Same with Avanti, right? People are going to start moving away, or they should. Maybe they won't, but they should. I think a lot of companies nowadays are also allowing Mac computers into their environment, which are way more secure, and way fewer vulnerabilities. They're not perfect. No, they're not. However, we don't see, hundreds of vulnerabilities every month for their Mac computers, OS X operating system. You just don't see that. Well, why? What's the difference? What does Apple do so much differently that Microsoft doesn't? That to me is the big question. And this is also, I think, why you're seeing such a big push for Macs is because they're more secure. The problem is Active Directory is highly used everywhere. There is no Mac equivalent of Active Directory, or there was at one point, and I think they got rid of it. But you got Novell NetWare, which nobody uses anymore. It's rarely used. You do have other third-party IDPs like Okta that could be your primary identity provider, and you could use that with your Mac, I guess. However, that's just not the common thing anymore. It's still using Windows servers with Active Directory, and you're using Azure or Entra ID, and that's just kind of the standard still. It's the best directory service that there is currently. But I do think that eventually people are going to get sick of the patching all this. It just gets really old. I don't understand how this is such a problem for so long. And Mac, OS X seems to be way fewer vulnerabilities every month. And Microsoft is in the hundreds every month, and 0 days, and exploited in the wild, and all these things. But I digress. I guess, maybe this will never change, but it's such a lift and shift for organizations that are using Active Directory and Azure and Entra ID to fully migrate away from all of that. It takes a ton of effort, especially if you have a massive organization. It's super hard to do all this. If you're a much smaller org, this is, much easier. But if you have 15,000 users, this is going to be an extreme lift and shift to move away from the Windows world, right? So, and we'll never fully get away from it. We still use the word processing and Excel. The whole Office suite is the most popular as well. So I don't see that going away or changing anytime soon either. But nonetheless, it's just, to me, it seems counterintuitive to use such a vulnerable operating system everywhere you go. And I'm hoping that it changes. And I'm hoping that, if you use Avanti, I hope that you get away from Avanti, because they keep coming out with all kinds of bad news and extreme vulnerabilities in their products. And they have a lot of different products too. So it's an ever-growing list of issues, right? So anyway, I just wanted to, fuel that fire a little bit to migrate to a more secure platform. When you see organizations so Avanti specifically, I looked into using them a while back for their patch management tool, but they had acquired like 3 different companies. Like, they were trying to merge it all together. It was such a hodgepodge, and it was very, very quirky and clunky and difficult to use, I would say, as well. They purchased a company called Shavlik or something, and then 2 other companies, and they tried to just mesh all this software together. Well, that you're seeing the end result of that, kind of acquisition, and trying to merge these 2 products together. That's not an easy task. And oftentimes when you try to do that, you create these security vulnerabilities, right? But I just don't know how other, much more secure platforms do so much better. Are they doing code scanning better? Are they, do they have other checks in place that check for vulnerabilities in the code before they publish it? Do they have other ways of testing. I don't know. I don't have all those inner working details, but it just seems interesting that some orgs or some pieces of software are so extremely vulnerable and others are, not. And maybe it's the popularity factor too. I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, Windows is used by everybody in the world, so that's why it's the most targeted. Well, yeah, it's the most targeted for sure. So why would you want to use that if it's the most targeted? I mean, the arguments go on, right? I wouldn't want to use the most targeted operating system personally. I would much rather use something that's a little off the radar that still allows me to do my job, right? And Mac certainly fits the bill. Hell, even Linux. I mean, most applications now are all web-based. You have web-based, Outlook on the web. You got Word on the web, Excel on the web, all different kinds of things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can still use a machine with just a web browser. I mean, heck, like a Chromebook even would be more secure than Microsoft Windows. All right, some other interesting news. And this may be a good thing, potentially, but Russia is apparently experimenting with cutting off the internet. And this, I've seen this, there's several articles about this where Russia's testing, basically cutting themselves off from the internet and just having an internet, I guess, in their own country and not the World Wide Web. It would just be the Russian web, apparently. So this is an interesting move, and actually for cybersecurity, this may be a good thing if it actually comes to fruition. So yeah, this is just, I don't know, because a lot of the phishing and hacking is coming from Russia and China, places like that, North Korea. Well, if Russia's taken off that map of, frequent attackers, well, that might be a good thing. And I guess we'll see if it actually happens. I'm curious to see, because they're already testing it. They've already done a few tests, apparently, and Putin wants to do this. So, hey, all right, dude, cut yourselves off. That's great. Less phishing for us to deal with, right? So, yeah, hopefully they do, and hopefully it cuts down on some of the hacking and phishing attempts that are going on. So I guess we'll see. You just never know. And last but not least to mention, if you're a fan of donuts, Krispy Kreme, they got some ransomware and shut down operations there for a little while. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It impacted all kinds of online orders and various operations at Krispy Kreme donuts. So your donut line might be a little bit slower while they fight through this attack that they had. They called it a cyber attack, but let's be real, it's probably ransomware. The articles that I saw, they don't have a ton of details about what exactly happened, and they may still be going through the investigation process. But typically when you see a big outage like this, it's ransomware related. So that would be my assumption, at least. All right, I also want to talk about return to office mandates and, how are those working out? I'm kind of curious. Amazon forced a bunch of their employees back, and you're seeing this. It's such a split decision, right? You see some orgs that are hardcore about, no, you got to go back to the office, and others are more flexible. And it's interesting, too, because the times that you do go into the office, oftentimes you get on a Zoom call or a Teams call, or you sit in a meeting on your computer. Well, why commute, 30 minutes, an hour, however long it takes you to get to work in rush hour traffic, and then the same thing on the way home? Why do that if all you're going to do is sit in a Teams meeting or a Zoom call? Like, I don't understand. What is the purpose of that? To me, that's where, especially if you do computer work, being, in person doesn't make a ton of sense. If you do like accounting and IT and all these things that are just, sitting behind a computer crunching numbers in Excel or whatever, you don't need to be in an office to do that. You can do that from anywhere. So I guess I'm really wondering why these organizations are forcing people back, and there's been a ton of pushback too from the employees where everybody got used to working from home, and really it's so much more efficient. You can be at your computer working right at 8 o'clock every day, whereas if you got traffic, I mean, heck, if you get stuck in some bad accident or whatever on the freeway, you might not get to work till 9, 9:30, 10. It just depends. I've had days commuting where I didn't get to the office until 10:30. Because I got stuck. There's a massive accident and there's nowhere to go. And you're literally parked on the freeway waiting for the accident to clear. And it can take hours and hours and hours. What a waste of time. What a waste of resources. What a waste of gas. What a waste of everything like that, right? So I don't know. I just don't understand the they say, oh, it's for collaboration purposes, and blah. But if you're sitting on a Zoom call anyway when you go to the office, how collaborative is that? Anytime that I go into the office, that's what I do. I sit on meeting calls and Zoom calls, and the only collaboration I'm doing is over that, Zoom call. Sure, you might get the random person to walk up to your cube and talk to you for a few minutes, but that's more of a distraction than it is, working together on something. Oftentimes it's like, hey, what's up, dude? How you doing? And you start shooting the breeze with them, and you're ignoring the other work that you should be doing. So I guess there's a happy medium in there somewhere, but I think a lot of it stems to the corporate real estate that these companies have invested so much money in. They buy these massive office buildings, all these facilities, and pay all this money for all these fancy office buildings that nobody's using. Well, right, what's the point? Like, sorry that you bought all that, but sell it, right? You don't need to have all these people sitting in a cube. And by the way, too, COVID taught us how easily things can spread, how easily illnesses can spread, especially in the winter time when it's flu season, it's cold season, it's all that. Why in the world would you want to force people into an office where they're just going to get everybody sick? And then now your employees are taking more time off because they need sick time and blah, blah, Now, I understand the flip side of this too, where sometimes remote employees take huge advantage of the fact that they're remote and they work from, whatever foreign country they want to work from, or they work from a cruise ship or some crazy, there are crazy things that happen like that, right? So I guess it's a hard, thing to figure out, but I think really the ideal situation is to have the tech workers or people that are just working on a computer all day or sitting in, Zoom calls that day, have them work at home, right? And just set the expectation with them that, hey, look, you are meant to be working at home. You are not to be meant to be working, in some foreign country or, traveling the world while you're working. That's not acceptable. You have to just outline these rules and boundaries and tell people, hey, that's not the way we do it. If you're working from home, you need to be at your home working and focused, not in, some cruise ship somewhere floating on the ocean while you're quote unquote working. So I really think if corporate America would just mandate those types of things, you could save a ton of employees, right? Also too, if your employees are remote, that opens up your talent pool way wider, right? Because if you have, only local employees, well, then you can only pull from the talent pool in that city, right? It's rare when somebody moves to a new city just for a job. It does happen, don't get me wrong, but the vast majority of your talent is going to come from whatever city you're in. But think about this. If you open that up to remote workforce, then, the sky is the limit with the talent that you can acquire because they can work remotely. You just have to set those boundaries and set those guidelines and those policies and say, hey, look, if we detect that you're, not working at home and you're traveling the globe and you're doing whatever, then guess what? You're fired. Lay that out for people and they're not going to go crazy, right? There are other instances where people will take, ridiculously long breaks and they'll have to, deal with their screaming babies at home, and that's also a problem, right? So I understand it from a lot of different angles, but again, I think it's about setting the expectation up front that, hey, you're not supposed to be doing this, you're not supposed to be doing that, so on and so forth. All right. Anyway, over to the crypto world. My goodness, the explosive growth of Bitcoin. Holy smokes, we hit $100,000 for one Bitcoin. I think 102 or 3 actually. And that's just shocking to see. We also saw our good friend Ripple, or XRP, really just exploded too. It was, it'd been floating around $1 for the longest time, and we got all the way up to like $2.75 with Ripple. So all good things, and typically when Bitcoin has a run, all the altcoins kind of follow. We saw that with Ripple and a bunch of others too. Ethereum was sitting around 4,000. It dipped a little bit, but right back up near that 4,000 range again too. So all good things to see there in the crypto world. I do think that we got a little bit more left on the bull run. I'm surprised it took this long for the bull run to start, but I do think there's going to be a little bit more. Maybe a few more months worth of this. I think it's going to float around 100K for another few weeks, and then we'll pop up to, 110, 115, 120, whatever that next number is. And yeah, we'll just kind of ride the wave here and see what happens. But don't be surprised if you see some pretty healthy pullbacks to 20 and 30% at times. But, the vast majority of it is going to be the upward trend from what it looks like. So all good stuff to see there. And, there's just more and more and more meme coins that are coming out, which are really just, I don't know what's going on. I'm sure you saw the news about the Hawk Tuah girl and her cryptocurrency that came out. And it was apparently a big rug pull kind of thing. And all these people got scammed out of their money. Well, yeah, but it's crypto, man. What do you expect? You think the Hawk Tuah coin is going to... come on, man. The fact that people buy into this crap and then get mad, and they're threatening to sue her, and they're threatening her life, and all this craziness now, and it's like, okay, I hope that was worth it. This, all because of this, random crypto coin you decided to invest in because of the Hawk Tuah girl. But yeah, that's always funny to see. If you're investing in a meme coin, just expect to lose whatever you're investing. I wouldn't worry too much about it. One thing I do find funny is the Department of Efficiency, I think is what it was, or something like that. The acronym is DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency or something like that, where Elon Musk is the head of this government efficiency department, but it spells out Doge. Oh my goodness, it just does. You can't make this up, really. It makes you laugh. So I guess, hey, you know what? Dogecoin may make a run here, so get ready. We got the Doge department in the government now, so hey, why not Dogecoin have a run, right? Yeah, let's go. So this is not financial advice, by the way. I'm just shooting from the hip on my speculations, so please don't take this as gospel by any means, but certainly fun to play along and to watch all the developments and see how things go. DeFi, you haven't really heard much about DeFi as much anymore. They say there's going to be a revolution in that, but really it just kind of fell by the wayside. And then all of the Ethereum apps that were being built on the Ethereum blockchain, they've all just kind of gotten a little quiet, I would say. There's not this huge push for all these blockchain games anymore and all this. Now it's just all about the meme coins, it seems like. So anyway, be careful out there for sure. Don't invest any more than you're willing to lose. If you invest in a meme coin, expect to lose it all, because they could rug pull that thing at any second, and you're going to be out however much you invested. So the top dogs are typically the good ones you want to stick with long term. Bitcoin, Ethereum, stuff like that. Ripple surprised me. I'm actually surprised it got as high as it did. I don't think we'll see it go much past $3, if that. I don't foresee that happening. For it to overtake Bitcoin, the price of one XRP coin would have to be like, $4 or $5, I think. And I don't think it's going to get anywhere near Bitcoin. So I think $2.50, $3 is probably about as far as it's going to get. But hey, I could be wrong there too. But if you had Ripple and you've been holding it forever, well, you finally got your day. I had so much Ripple back in like 2018, I think it was. I think I had over 1,000 Ripple. It was worth like 30 cents or something. And man, don't I wish I had kept that. But holding on to all that for such a long period of time, to get that, to get that return. Yeah, I just wasn't willing to do it. Unfortunately, I had other things that I wanted to throw my money at, cryptocurrency wise. But anyway, that's all I got for today. Thanks again for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.